Dave Mitchell doesn't see the picture in the newspaper of Abdul Munim Ali Hamoud, who is gesturing in a grimace of grief toward the corpse of his 22-year-old son, who was blown up by a lunatic in a car full of explosives. It's not on the front page of the local paper, which has a picture of a moose, because the moose lottery was that day. And the right to legally shoot a moose is a big deal in Maine, though who knows how many are poached for meat or shot for the evil hell of shooting something. Dave doesn't read the paper anyway. Words give him a headache, and he's got enough to think about, what with driving his truck around, delivering ductwork to contractors who are installing ventilation and heating systems in, you name it, restaurants, laundromats, stores, garages, offices. Probably when you're sitting and eating pork fried rice, you don't think about the ductwork and how the fans are blowing those hot oil fumes out into the night. But it's got to be there. And Dave is good with it, because it's steady work, and he's married with a little girl. Though things have turned frosty between his wife and him. They make love rarely, and when they do, it's over fast. Two busy cogs, a narrow duty. When Dave watches the women on the street, he craves them with a longing that goes beyond wishing. He needs their bodies, needs to touch their nipples and cup their breasts and break loose inside of them. It's a bad feeling, because he loved his wife and doesn't know where that love went. Sure as shit it's not in the Daily with its headline moose story. Dave used to hunt deer, but doesn't do more now than keep his rifle clean, and come winter sit in a nice fishing shack with some buddies, gab about what happened to so-and-so, and drink Jim Beam. There are worse things, like pulling your back out, the way Rick Davis did at work last week, or being a father in Baghdad who has no 22-year-old son anymore, who has nothing but the air to move his hands around in. We can't live without that air. Dave knows that. And some days when he's idling at a light and surrounded by spewing exhaust pipes, he can imagine we'll ruin that. We'll get up one morning, start gasping, and turn blue. Right now, though, it's lunchtime on the road, which means pulling the truck into Burger King and eyeing a woman in another line and wondering what he'll do tonight when he gets home. Maybe he'll finger the remote and see what's on. Duane Richardson had been growing this beetle hairdo and looked pretty dorky on him, because his hair wasn't lank and fine, but more like a wavy wire brush. One day grew into another, until the principal invited Duane in for a chat, as he liked to put it, and said he was going to suspend Duane if Duane didn't get rid of that silly long hair. It was an issue of honor, and Duane said, "No, sir," in a voice of deferential defiance. During his week off, Duane hiked down to the recruiter's office in Portland and joined the Army. He was in Nam in what seemed like no time, and no one thought much about him, and then he was dead. It was sketchy as to how it happened, but he wasn't coming back alive, and the principal said on the loudspeaker one day that we'd lost a hero. By that time, the Beatles were starting to get pretty weird, as were a lot of other people. And later, Duane's sister Patty said that another grunt in the platoon told her how he and Duane used to smoke a bone some nights for their nerves and talk about high school and music. The first thing the Army had done was cut his hair. Irony is the oxygen of modern times, Mr. Hamilton, the smartest of the 4 history teachers, used to say. Maybe Duane didn't have him. Or if he did, he was looking out the window at the sunshine when the teacher said it. Or he was humming A Hard Day's Night in his head. Or he heard it quite distinctly and wrote it down in his notes and paused and thought. I want to say it's all women, but there are men too, though it seems most of the time it's women who stand out in the weather in front of tall buildings and smoke cigarettes. Sometimes only one person is there, a solitary figure, as poems used to say, in the era when a standard emotional image was no disgrace to drop into the collection box. But however many people there are, they seem, in their abstracted poses as they brush a crumb off a lapel or shift their feet, to be the only people in America who dare to be seen thinking in public. You can watch the thoughts betraying their faces. What am I going to say to her? What he said to me? How much the checking account is overdrawn? The brakes on the SUV still are too tight. And on, into supra-idealist wastelands of uneasiness, to say nothing of random pangs about sex. You couldn't build a building big enough to house all the thoughts of the smokers in Midtown. Mental energy is an impossible force based in a frail venue, which leads to the introduction of mortality into the poem, because these sources of life, generatrixes and priestesses of the breeding emotion, the very roses of blood, are sucking on what their kids who have been exposed to a health-conscious, moralizing elementary school curriculum refer to as death sticks. You don't have to have a PhD in sociology to know that women do not get the respect due them. That the buildings and the money that made the buildings were the work of men, who then went home to the little woman, or the dipsomaniac woman, or the angry but not showing it until the guy opens his self-important mouth woman. But smoking is pleasant in its garish, harsh way. The anxious inhale and then blowing the smoke out. Well, that's a semi-sublime second or two right there. Plus there's gossiping if someone familiar is present, or complaining, or talking about what an idiot someone else is. Men and women can both be idiots. It's gender blind. But as I said, a lot of times the smoking is solo and has an I gotta go down to the street quality, and the woman's hand is shaky. Mental pain is worse than dislocating your finger, or a sinus infection, because it goes on, and setting it right may be another delusion that brings more pain. This woman is thinking hard, and the city could sink beneath her thoughts, as in some Hollywood urban horror epic, except there's no hunky guy with an automatic weapon and nuclear biceps to make things right. Instead, there is this woman who has on a white blouse with a small but noticeable tomato stain at the waist. The collar of the blouse is frilly. Her hair is teased up, medium high. Her eyes are gaunt. When another woman comes out the revolving door and lights up, she turns to her and gives her the biggest, most beautiful smile of cognizance. You, my puffing sister.